We'll deal with that separately. I want to talk to Anisha about the kind of recovery you are anticipating from here. Different letters being bandied about. There is a sharp V, there is a possible W, then there's also K. Which letter and why do you think is most likely?
I would go with a U, and a fairly narrow U. I feel that we are seeing a sharp rebound overall in terms of COVID, and that will help things settle down. At the same time, we've seen many families go through a very stressful period, and therefore there is going to be cautiousness before they start spending. And once things come back to normal, I do see a fair bit of rebound coming in. We saw that for tractor sales over the last week, because we are starting to see the sowing season coming in, and therefore that has been prioritized in rural areas. We haven't seen that uptick on the auto side as yet, but that's something we expect in the next couple of weeks. So overall, I would be optimistic on this, and I would look at it as a narrow U.
You're calling this a narrow U, or at least that's what you're hoping for. Sanjeev Mehta, your sense of the kind of recovery that we're likely to see, because there are two things that can typically happen. One, there is a lot of pent-up demand, which will explode as these lockdowns end, because people have been cooped up at home. They're itching to go out, spend, itching to go back to malls. The other reality is that this time round, people have had to deal with the very real consequence of financial distress. They've dealt with death, devastation, and therefore, will they then have the appetite to want to go out and spend big time? So how do you see this?
Yeah, Rahul, I won't get entrapped in using alphabets, but I'll talk about, I think, what the country needs to do, and that then I'll also explain how I see things being impacted. I think first, like Anish rightly talked about, into the Rabi harvest and Kharif sowing season. So one very important bit is that we have to see that it runs without any disruption. Seamless procurement of incoming crops, and so that, the agri-supply chains continue running unhindered. That's the first thing. Then, as Rashesh talked about, is the poor, rural poor and the urban poor. Rural poor, last time we did a great job of direct transfer of benefit, extending Manrega, and free supply of food grain. I think that will also have to be extended. But what we will also have to do is look after the urban poor, who have also been very severely impacted. The third, I would say, is MSME, and this would be very clearly giving them, whether it's a credit guarantee or whether it is the support you need to give to informal sector employees, because many of them would have lost jobs during the last 6 to 8 weeks. The other one, I would say, is the force multiplier to create livelihoods and give a fillip to the economy, which would be sectors like real estate. Yeah, because they impact massively. And if there is things like interest subsidy that we could give on housing, that would have a big impact. Last but not the least, there are many stress sectors where the situation has got exacerbated by the second wave. And I'm not talking about funding the zombie companies. I'm talking about which would otherwise be healthy. We need to ensure whether it is credit support, extension of debt, direct payroll support, the hospitality, tourism, aviation sector, that's what we need to do. Last but not the least, very critical is consumption of confidence. Now, confidence comes from two important things: more money in the hands of more people, and the second is a hope for a better future. As my co-panelists rightly talked about, that there has been a fear psychosis. People are worried that they may need to have money for another way for health reasons. So if we embark on this tiered approach of going up and down so that people know what's happening, the second is vaccination at speed. That will restore the confidence. And once the consumer confidence is up and about, I think the India story has taken a pause. It's not going to go anywhere. And India will bounce back, and I'm extremely optimistic. From the mid to long-term story of India, that hasn't faded away at all.
But at this moment, Uday Shankar, would you concede that there is a mismatch between the expectations or hopes of India Inc. with the current approach of the government? All of you and others advocating printing more notes or increasing the fiscal deficit even further, more cash stimulus, more direct benefit transfers over what's already been done. Whereas from what we've heard from the finance minister, she seems to believe let the budget play itself out. There is no immediate need for greater stimulus. Is there a mismatch there?
No, I wouldn't say there is a mismatch, Rahul. And we are saying that there is need for stimulus, general stimulus, more targeted stimulus, and there are sectors where you need to go deeper. You need to look at, unleashing forces of consumption and need to protect really poor people in rural areas and poor people in urban areas. You need to spur demand, all of that. But it's also equally true that the budget was designed after the first wave of COVID last year and all the economic impact that it took. And I think it was a very radical, very bold budget, and it must be allowed to play out. However, we should also be mindful that there is a second wave that has come in since then, and it has caused devastation further upon the devastation caused last year. So there has to be a top-up that needs to be considered. And we need to start looking at what are those areas and what are the kinds of, what is the nature of that doubling down of the stimulus and accelerative forces that we need to be looking at.
Okay, in the last part of this conversation, I want to talk about